You, Me, and the River. By Arabella Vaughn. The first time I saw the river, I felt it watching me. Not in a scary way. Not exactly. More like it noticed me. Like it had been waiting. I hadn't meant to come here, not really. I'd seen the job advert and thought this is the break I needed. A place where no one knew my name, my family, or my past. But the moment the wind shifted and the reeds rustled like they were whispering something only I was supposed to hear, I knew this wasn't going to be the kind of escape I thought it was. This place had a story. And somehow, I was already part of it. I stood outside the River Reeves Boat Museum, shifting from foot to foot. I rubbed my sweaty palms on my hips. I looked up at the low-slung, dark-timbered structure that seemed to rise gently from the lake's edge, as if it had always belonged there. It didn't shout for attention, it whispered, blending with the muted blues of the water and the soft greens of the surrounding foliage. Its angular rooflines echoed the peaks in the distance, and large glass panels reflected the shifting sky, clouded now with a pale morning light. The cool morning breeze ruffled my hair, and the faint scent of damp earth and fresh water filled the air. I inwardly sighed. Here I was, starting over once again. I thought of my older two sisters, probably at work right now. Charlotte and Rebecca had their lives mapped out. Charlotte was a successful architect, married with kids, while Rebecca ran a popular bakery with her girlfriend Jules. Much to my parents' disappointment, I chose not to go to university, decided not to join the family business. Instead, I had drifted through various jobs, none of them sticking. I just couldn't find anything that I really wanted to do. So, at 24 I now found myself here, about to start another job as a museum tour guide. I am not upset though. Oddly, I am happy with my lot right now. The boat museum offered stability, and though the work isn't glamorous, it is enough to keep me grounded. I pushed open the creaky door of the museum, the soft chime of a bell greeting me. The interior smelled of wood, aged metal, and the river. A constant reminder of the world beyond the museum walls. "Ah, Sam. Welcome," a lively voice cut through the stillness like sunlight through mist. I turned to see a woman in her late 40s striding toward me with a bounce in her step, as if the ground itself gave her energy. She moved like someone who lived close to the water, light-footed with a little bounce in her step, and with an ease that spoke of a life spent outdoors. Her short, curly hair was flecked with silver at the temples, windswept but confident. And her blue-green eyes sparkled with the same restless gleam as the lake behind her, clear, watchful, full of stories. She wore a practical, layered outfit in earthy tones, sleeves rolled to the elbows, and there was a freshness about her, like she'd just stepped out of the water. Not damp, not unpleasant, more like the scent of riverbanks and moss, of wild ferns after rain. It clung to her faintly, as if she carried a little bit of the land and lake with her wherever she went. "I'm glad to be here, ma'am," I replied, offering a nervous smile as I shook the woman's hand. "Please, call me Elaine," the woman said, her grip firm and warm. "I run the museum, and this here," she swept an arm toward the building with casual pride, "is a labor of love for my family. Been in our care for generations. And something tells me you'll fit right in." She grinned, eyes crinkling at the corners, and I felt the first flutter of belonging stir in my chest. Elaine led me around the museum, explaining its history. The exhibits were fascinating: old boat parts, maps of the river, models of ships from centuries past, and photos of people who had lived and worked by the water. The river, which was once bustling with boat traffic, now barely supported any trade. The museum's role was to preserve its history while teaching future generations about the importance of the waterway. As we finished the tour, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about the place was different. There was a presence here, something unspoken, like the echo of old conversations or the weight of stories too long kept quiet. I shook it off, chalked it up to nerves or the novelty of it all. I hadn't worked in a building like this before. The sounds bounced differently here, softened and stretched, like they didn't want to leave. Footsteps echoed with a hollow resonance, and even voices seemed to linger in the air a little longer than they should. It made the place feel alive. Not in a haunted way, not quite. More like the museum itself was listening, watching, even holding its breath between the creaks of the timber and the gentle slap of water against the jetty. The end of my first day came with the kind of tired that felt good. My feet ached, my throat was dry from hours of talking, but my smile lingered, a little lopsided from use. The museum had been surprisingly busy, the tours full, and with Elaine's steady support at my side, I'd found myself slipping into the rhythm of it more easily than expected. With just an hour left on the clock, Elaine pressed a wicker basket into my arms, neatly packed with snacks, thermoses, and spare supplies. "Mind taking this down to the boat?" she asked, brushing a curl from her face. "The lads have just got back from a day trip and they'll need a top-up for tomorrow," I nodded, adjusting the basket in my arms. "Of course." The path to the dock was quiet now, the last of the day's light painting everything gold and soft. As the boat eased up to the jetty, guests trickled off with contented chatter, and I greeted them with an easy smile, offering directions, parting words, the kind of small talk I was still getting used to. Then the skipper appeared. His sun-lined face and hands that looked like they'd been mending ropes for half a lifetime. "You must be the new guide," he said, eyeing the basket with a knowing smile. "That for me?" "Yep," I grinned, holding it out. "Elaine said to make sure you're stocked. Need anything else?" He took it with a grateful nod, waving me off. "Nope, this'll do. Go on, day's nearly done." I turned to go, the light shifting as the sun dipped further. My mind wandered, half thinking about dinner, half still reliving the laughter from one of the afternoon's groups, when I rounded the corner and nearly walked straight into someone. "Oh. Sorry," I exclaimed, flustered, stepping back quickly. My heart jumped as I looked up. The man standing in front of me seemed almost unreal in the fading light. Tall, with white blonde hair that caught the last of the sun like strands of silver, and eyes so vividly blue they seemed to hold their own kind of light. His jeans and t-shirt were nothing remarkable, but they clung to him in a way that made him seem effortlessly grounded, as if he belonged to the landscape somehow. "Hi, I'm Kai," he said, voice low and calm, like the lake at dusk. "Sam," I replied, blinking myself back to the moment, offering a sheepish smile. "I'm the new tour guide." Kai gave a small nod. He didn't say anything else, but his gaze stayed on me, unreadable, steady. It wasn't impolite, just focused. I felt my pulse quicken under that look, unsure if it was curiosity I saw there, or something deeper. Something I couldn't quite name. "Well," I said, my voice lighter than I felt, "nice to meet you." I turned and strode toward the museum doors, my face warm, suddenly very aware of the way I moved. I didn't look back, but I felt his gaze linger, and that strange energy stayed with me long after I'd stepped back inside. The days began to settle into a rhythm after that. Mornings started early, the lake often wrapped in mist, the museum quiet except for the soft thud of my footsteps and the occasional bird calling overhead. I was getting the hang of things, how to time the tours just right, which exhibits made the kids light up, when Elaine needed help and when she needed space. The staff was cordial enough. Polite smiles. But there was a distance there I couldn't ignore. I often caught hushed conversations trailing off when I walked into the break room. Some of the older volunteers seemed to watch me a little too closely, like I was something new they weren't sure they wanted to keep. I guessed it was because of my age. I was at least 10 years younger than anyone else, well except for Kai. I didn't see him often, not really. He was always around the edges, on the dock tightening ropes, in the boatyard hunched over some bit of machinery, slipping in and out of doorways I hadn't yet explored. He didn't mingle with the others, didn't seem to care much for conversation, but he had a presence I couldn't ignore. Quiet. Solid. Like the lake itself. The first time I saw him again after our brief encounter was during a school tour. I was mid-sentence, telling a group of excited kids about one of the early steamboats, when I glanced toward the back door. There he was, leaning casually against the frame, arms folded, half shadowed by the afternoon light, watching me. Later that day, when the museum had emptied out and the hush of early evening had settled in, I found myself wandering toward the back. I told myself it was curiosity about the boats, maybe even wanting to learn a bit about the maintenance work. It would help with the tours, if I could comment on the work being done, but really, I was hoping to see him again. I didn't know what I planned to say. I just wanted to understand the strange pull I felt whenever he was near. As I approached, I saw him up close for the first time. He was bending over a small boat, his hands working with delicate precision to fix a loose part. The sunlight caught his hair in such a way that it almost seemed to glow. His movements were graceful, as though he wasn't just fixing a boat but interacting with it, almost as if the boat itself was an extension of him. "Can I help with anything?" I asked, surprising myself with the question. Kai straightened slowly, glancing at me. His blue eyes seemed to flash for a moment before he gave a small, unreadable smile. "No, thank you. You can go back inside if you want. It's a bit messy out here." His voice was gentle but firm, as if he wasn't used to being interrupted. I hesitated, feeling a pull to stay. But I respected his space and nodded. "Oh, okay." Feeling instantly dismissed. Kai's gaze softened, just for a second. "The boats have a life of their own. Best to keep away." I blinked, confused by his words. I turned to leave, but my mind lingered on them. What did he mean by that? That night, after a long day of tours and too many names to remember, I returned to my little apartment tucked down a cobbled lane just a few minutes' walk from the museum. It wasn't much, just a one-bedroom with creaky floors and a window that looked out over the river, but it was mine. The town outside had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, not empty. The river stretched out in front of me like a sheet of glass, calm and silver under the moonlight. It was late, well past midnight, when I heard it. At first, I thought it was just the wind brushing through the trees that lined the riverbank. Soft, harmless. But then it came again, clearer this time. A murmur. Whispers. I was near the window, it was open a little, so I lowered myself into the chair nearby, tilting my head slightly. I listened, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But the sound grew, subtle, strange. Not wind. Not quite. It was voices. Whispering voices. Then silence. I waited but heard nothing more. I moved to the window, pressing my palm against the cool glass as I scanned the darkness outside. The river shimmered under the moon, unmoving, its surface so smooth it looked painted on. And then, just at the edge of my vision, something shifted. A shimmer. Like heat rising from the earth. I blinked, trying to focus, but it was gone. My heart was suddenly racing, my breath catching in my chest. And then I saw it, barely a flicker of movement in the distance, like a shadow slipping just beneath the water's surface. Then it paused, hugging the edge of the bank. It darkened as it dipped beneath the silver-touched current, almost indistinguishable from the night around it. A chill spread through me, crawling up my spine and settling heavy in my chest. "Get a grip," I whispered, stepping back from the window, trying to shake the sudden cold that clung to me. "You're tired. That's all." But even as I tried to reason with myself, my eyes continued scanning the water's edge, searching for the shape, the shimmer, something. I leaned in, trying to catch any hint of movement, any ripple, any explanation. Nothing. The river was still. Perfect. Like glass. The longer I stared, the more it felt like the entire river was holding its breath, waiting for me to react. I gently closed the window and drew the curtains, my hand trembling just slightly, and turned away. But the image stayed with me, that flicker of shadow, that impossible movement just beneath the surface. And that night, even wrapped in blankets with the hum of my small heater trying to comfort me, I barely slept. Every creak in the apartment made me jolt. Every whisper of wind outside made me sit up, listening. Something was out there. I knew it. And somehow, I knew, it had seen me too. The next morning, over a cup of tea in the museum kitchen, I mentioned it to Elaine. Tried to laugh it off like it hadn't kept me awake half the night. "You've got a good imagination, Sam," she said with a chuckle, stirring honey into her mug. "The river does have its own way of speaking, you know. There are a lot of stories about it, some say it whispers to those who listen carefully." She said it like a joke, like an old local tale meant to entertain visitors. But there was something in her eyes, just a flicker, that told me she wasn't laughing quite as much as she seemed. After another sleepless night filled with restless tossing and half-formed dreams, I woke feeling like my bones were made of stone. My head ached, my limbs were heavy, and my thoughts, disjointed and hazy, clung to fragments of whispers and shadows that I couldn't quite explain away. I stumbled through my morning routine in a daze, forcing down a slice of toast and coffee before giving up entirely. The apartment felt claustrophobic, like the walls were pressing in with every breath. I needed air. Outside, the morning was still cool, the mist clinging low over the lake, curling along the edges of the museum's rooftop like smoke. The dampness in the air kissed my cheeks, and for a moment, I let myself just breathe, deep, slow inhales that made my ribs stretch painfully, like I'd forgotten how. I wandered toward the docks without really meaning to. My feet seemed to carry me on their own, like they knew where I needed to be before I did. Kai stood at the end of the dock, crouched over some ropes, his hands deftly working complex knots. His presence was quiet but solid, like a stone placed just beneath the surface of a stream. He looked up as I approached. His eyes met mine and held there, calm and unreadable, but not cold. "Late night?" he asked softly, taking me in. I huffed a tired laugh. "Didn't sleep." He stood, brushing his hands on his jeans. "Bad dreams?" "Something like that," I murmured. I paused a few feet from him, unsure why I'd even come. "I just needed some air." He nodded, like he understood more than I was saying. We stood in silence for a few moments, the kind that didn't feel awkward, just suspended. The lake lapped softly against the pilings. Then I added, almost without thinking, "I keep feeling this pull. I've been working here only a few weeks now," but I paused, sighing. "It's like something's calling me. The river, the museum, I don't know. It's my day off and here I am." It sounds crazy, I know. His gaze sharpened, though his body remained still. "It's not crazy." I blinked. "No." He tilted his head slightly, studying me. "The river speaks to you now, Sam." A shiver ran through me. It wasn't just his quiet voice. It wasn't even the words. It was knowing. Like he confirmed something I hadn't dared to believe. "I don't know what it's saying," I whispered. "Not yet," he said. "But you will." The weight of his words settled over me like a warm cloak. I didn't understand. I searched his face, trying to read him, still not sure if I should feel comforted or warned. And then, to my surprise, Kai smiled. It was small, subtle, just a gentle curve at the corners of his mouth, but it changed everything. The tension I hadn't realized I was holding in my shoulders began to ease. There was something grounding in that expression, something warm that settled low in my chest. For the first time since arriving, I didn't feel entirely alone. Kai wasn't like other men, there was no pressure to be anything but myself. He didn't bombard me with questions or even flirt, not that I had men lining up to flirt with me, but it was like he took me for who I was without any explanation. It felt good to be near him. Just like the river, he had a pull, the strange sense that I was seen by both of them. I shook the thought out of my head, internally chastising myself. "Like a river can see you, Sam," I admonished the very thought. But as I stood there beside him in the pale morning light, the mist curling like ribbon off the lake, I felt steadier. As if something had shifted. As if the current beneath the surface of everything had just started to pull us both in the same direction. The weather had finally shifted. The gray, heavy clouds that had hung low over the lake for days had drifted off, giving way to soft sunlight and a sky so blue it almost looked painted. Elaine suggested I take today's tour outside. She thought the local pensioners group due in would enjoy lunch under the new canvas canopy set up by the water for the summer season. They were an animated bunch of regulars who knew more about the town's history than I ever would. She was right. By the time we wrapped up the short museum tour, they were already settled at the long picnic-style tables outside, pulling out thermoses and homemade cakes, chattering over cups of tea like they'd known each other forever. Laughter rippled through the group, light and carefree. It was infectious. I was mid-explanation about the boatyard restoration when I felt it again, that strange pull. Like a string loosely tied to my chest, my eyes drifted toward the maintenance shed almost before I realized it, and sure enough, Kai was there. He looked up as he passed, and we exchanged a quick nod. I must have hesitated, because one of the older ladies, Esther, I think, nudged me with a bony elbow, her eyes glinting with mischief. "He's a bit of all right, that one," she giggled, sounding more like a schoolgirl than a 70-something-year-old. "You should see him in the summer, shirt off and soaked to the elbows." I flushed instantly, just as Kai looked up again. His eyes found mine, steady and unreadable. He didn't smile, but there was something in his gaze, curious, maybe soft. The heat in my cheeks bloomed brighter. I didn't catch whatever cheeky comment Esther made next. My brain had fuzzed over entirely. Eventually, the group settled into their lunches, and I ducked inside to nab a sandwich from the staff fridge before retreating to the edge of the dock. The sun was warm on my shoulders as I sat on one of the benches near the boats, unwrapping my sandwich with a tired sigh. The breeze coming off the lake was cool and smelled faintly of grass and engine oil, a weirdly comforting mix. A few minutes later, Kai appeared at the edge of my vision, carrying a small metal lunchbox. He paused like he wasn't sure if he should interrupt, then quietly sat down beside me on the bench without a word. For a moment, we just ate in companionable silence. The sounds of the pensioners laughing in the background, the lake lapping gently against the boats. It was nice. "What brought you here?" Kai asked after a while, biting into a sandwich that looked much better than mine. "River Reeves?" I asked. He nodded. I took a second to answer. Needed a change. Somewhere quiet. Thought this might be the kind of slow I needed. He made a small sound of agreement, not quite a word. "Family nearby?" I shook my head. "No. Just me. My dad passed a couple years ago. He loved boats, though. Thought he'd get a kick out of this place." Kai looked at me, taking in my words. "What about you?" I asked, wanting to shift the focus. "Have you always worked here?" "Mostly," he said. "Spent my summers here with Aunt Elaine. My older brother and I used to race our own patched-up rowboat around the island out there." He jerked his head toward a small cluster of trees offshore. "He was faster. I was better at fixing things." "That sounds about right," I smiled. Kai smirked, just a little. He still thinks he won all those races fair and square. We lapsed into silence again, but it wasn't awkward. Just easy. The kind of quiet that doesn't need to be filled. The breeze picked up and fluttered the napkin on my lap. A gull cried overhead. Somewhere behind us, Esther let out a loud cackle followed by a wheezing snort. Kai's shoulders shook with quiet laughter. "They're relentless." "Tell me about it," I said, grinning. "One of them offered to set me up with her grandson." "Should I be jealous?" he asked, glancing at me with a playful glint. I choked on a piece of lettuce. "I'm not sure he's your type," I quickly got out. He chuckled quietly. "No, I doubt he would be," he said, and took another bite of his sandwich. And for a few moments, sitting there in the sun with crumbs on my lap and the lake glittering just beyond our toes, everything felt weirdly perfect. I had just eaten my dinner, a creamy pasta with garlic and herbs, something simple but comforting, and was scraping the leftovers into a tub when my phone buzzed in my pocket. The kitchen was quiet except for the clink of cutlery and the hum of the fridge. I wiped my hands on a tea towel before pulling out my phone. The screen lit up with a name I half hoped wouldn't appear tonight: Charlotte. I sighed and thumbed the green button. "Hey. You sound out of breath," Charlotte said, skipping pleasantries. "Let me guess, you've been chasing ducks or dusting off old ropes?" I let out a dry laugh. "Just finished dinner." "You're still playing museum, then?" she asked, the word museum curled with judgment. I pressed the lid onto the container, a little too hard. "It's a job, Char. One I like." "It's not a job, Sam. It's a placeholder. You can't keep running from reality." "I'm not running. I just needed something different." "You needed to come home," she snapped. "Mum still thinks you will. She's not saying it, but I can tell. You know she's struggling, right?" I closed my eyes. "I'm not coming back." "Why?" she pressed. "Because you're scared? Because it's easier to pretend you're not wasting time than admit you don't know what you're doing." I clenched my jaw. "Because every time I come back, you treat me like I'm broken. Like I'm the family embarrassment. You and Mum have your lives all mapped out and I'm just the one who never fit in." Charlotte fell silent. Then, quieter, "You've never even tried." That hit hard. I swallowed. "Maybe because I didn't want your kind of life, Char. Maybe I'm finally figuring out who I am out here, away from all the noise." She scoffed. "By giving museum tours to pensioners? By waking up and not hating myself," I shot back. By being somewhere that doesn't make me feel small. Charlotte exhaled. So what, this is it now? Boats and tea towels and pretending you're in a movie set. This is real, Char. It may not be shiny, but it's mine. For once, something is mine. Silence stretched on the other end of the line. Fine, she said finally, her voice clipped. But don't expect us to wait around while you play at boats. The line went dead. Frustrated, I shoved the phone in my pocket and grabbed my jacket. The apartment felt suddenly too small, too hot, too filled with the echo of her voice. I needed air. Needed space. It was late, but I didn't care. The night air was cool against my flushed cheeks, the scent of lake water stronger now, tinged with something older. Faintly metallic. I wandered down past the edge of the museum grounds, toward the docks and shoreline. The street lamps lining the path flickered softly, the bulbs buzzing like sleepy insects. I walked slower as I neared the water, the ripples glinting under the weak orange glow of the lights. Then I saw it, just beneath the surface. Something moved. I froze. It wasn't a fish, wasn't a ripple from a breeze. It was darker than that. Thicker. Shadowy shapes, gliding below the surface like they weren't bound by the laws of water at all. My breath caught, the hairs on the back of my neck prickling. The lights above me flickered again, once, twice, then steadied. I took a step back, then another, my heart thudding. Whatever it was, it hadn't broken the surface. I turned, pulse roaring in my ears, just about to break into a run. Samantha! I jumped out of my skin. Margaret stood behind me, hands on her hips, face pinched with disapproval and something else. Worry, maybe. Her white hair was pulled into its usual bun, and her cardigan was buttoned right up to her throat despite the warmth. What on earth are you doing out here? She scolded. You shouldn't be wandering around at night, not by the water. These old jetties aren't as safe as they look. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Not right away. Margaret didn't wait. She gave me a look that could curdle milk and waved a hand briskly toward the path. Go on, off with you. Get home. You'll catch a chill standing out here like that. I nodded mutely, still rattled, and let her usher me back toward the museum's rear gate. She didn't walk with me. Just stood there, watching until I disappeared down the path. It wasn't until I got back inside, hands trembling slightly as I peeled off my jacket, that the question hit me like a jolt. What had Margaret been doing out there? No coat. No dog. No reason. Just there. Standing in the dark, between the water and the path. Just like me. The days that followed passed in a blur. Museum tours, cheery visitors, lunches with staff, polite smiles. But under it all, I couldn't shake the thoughts swirling in my head. Kai's words lingered. The river speaks to you now, and Margaret, appearing out of nowhere at the river's edge, scolding me for doing exactly what she had been doing. It had left me confused, off balance, as if I were circling the edge of something I didn't understand. I kept trying to push it all aside, telling myself I was overthinking. That it was stress, or a lack of sleep. Maybe just my imagination trying to fill the silence of this quiet town. But deep down, somewhere I couldn't quite reach, I knew it wasn't just that. Something was different. That evening, after work, I found myself wandering along the riverbank again. I hadn't planned to. I told myself I was just stretching my legs, just getting some air. But the truth was, I was drawn to it. The way it moved. The way it sounded. There was a stillness in the world around me, but not empty, not lifeless. Everything felt more alive. The soft murmur of the river, the rustling trees, the scent of wet earth and wood smoke carried on the breeze, it all shimmered with something just out of reach. The moonlight touched the surface of the water, casting it in silver and shadow, and I stopped to watch. The glow pulsed faintly, almost like it breathed. I closed my eyes and tilted my face to the wind. I could feel something. Not quite words, not quite sound, but something brushing at the edge of my mind. Then I saw it. A small, injured bird, barely visible in the long grass near the water's edge. My breath caught as I slowly crouched down. It didn't move. It just blinked up at me, calm and still. Hey, little bird, I whispered gently. Do you need help? I edged closer, lowering myself onto my knees. The bird didn't flinch. I reached out, but before I could touch it I heard footsteps. Behind me. Soft but steady. I turned, startled. Kai. He stood a few feet away, his expression unreadable but his eyes were locked on me. I didn't mean to intrude, he said softly, his voice low and even. Can I help? Please, I said, a little breathlessly. It's hurt. Without a word, Kai stepped forward and peeled off the overshirt he'd been wearing, revealing a plain dark t-shirt underneath and his bare arms. He knelt beside me and gently wrapped the fabric around the bird with surprising tenderness. We'll take it to Elaine, he said, his voice quieter now. She's good with animals. I nodded, instinctively slipping my arms around the little bundle as he passed it to me. It was light. Warm. The bird barely moved, but I could feel its tiny heartbeat fluttering against my chest. We started walking. Kai stayed close, glancing down at the bird, then at me. How did you know it was there? He asked after a moment, his tone more curious than anything. I didn't, I admitted. I just saw it just before you showed up. He didn't answer right away. Just looked down again, watching the way the bird had settled into the crook of my arms. Then, almost like he was speaking to the air, the river has a way of calling to people who are attuned to it. I felt a small shiver crawl across my skin. Attuned, I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded slowly, eyes still on the bird. I think you're very attuned to the river, Sam. His words hung in the air between us, soft but weighted. I didn't know what to say. So, I said nothing. Elaine ushered us inside the house. Oh, poor thing, she murmured, taking it gently from me and placing it into a shallow plastic tub lined with an old tea towel. Her hands moved fast and practiced, reaching for bottles, a pipette, a small jar of what looked like powdered glucose. Within minutes, the bird was drinking from the pipette, its tiny eyes fluttering closed like it had finally allowed itself to rest. She's just exhausted, Elaine said, her voice softening. Sometimes they fly into the wind too long and before they know it they're exhausted. She glanced up at us with a smile. Why don't you two head into the kitchen and put the kettle on? Kai gave a small nod and turned toward the hall but paused. I just need to check something, I'll be in a minute. All right, I said, already heading in the direction of the kitchen, the bird's quiet recovery still echoing in my chest. I filled the kettle, listening to the water gurgle as it began to heat. The hum of Elaine's house was comforting. It was filled with the scent of herbs and warm wood. I pulled down a couple of mugs, let myself settle in the rhythm of the task. A few moments later, I stepped back out into the hallway. I moved quietly and just before I entered the small utility room by the back door, the room where Elaine had taken the bird. I heard the voices, and it stopped me in my tracks. She's not a forever, Kai. She's an outsider. You need to keep away from her, the deep voice of a man said. Then Kai's voice, quiet but sharp. You don't know that. You do, the man shot back. We both do. Don't make this harder. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The words settled like ice beneath my skin. I shifted my weight, and the floor creaked under my foot. The voices stopped. Kai appeared in the hallway, his expression unreadable, like a door had just closed behind his eyes. There you are, I said quickly, forcing a small, awkward smile. Just came to see if you wanted milk in your tea. He blinked once, then nodded. Yes, please. I glanced past him into the room, but it was empty. No sign of the other man. Kai stepped forward, moving past me like nothing had happened. But something had. And as I followed him back to the kitchen, hearing the kettle beginning to whistle, the words I'd heard repeated over and over in my mind, she's not a forever. She's an outsider. You need to keep away from her. What was that supposed to mean, and who was behind that voice? It was late. The quiet kind of late, where even the air feels like it's tiptoeing. Kai glanced up at the darkening sky and then at me. Want me to walk you home? He asked, his voice casual, but his eyes careful. I hesitated, but only for a moment. Sure. We set off in silence, the gravel crunching softly beneath our steps as we left Elaine's behind. The path back to my apartment curved along the riverbank, the moon casting silver light across the water's skin. It felt too quiet. I could feel the question bubbling in my throat, desperate to be asked, but Kai seemed more animated this evening. He talked about the boats, the moonlight. His voice was animated, almost too light, like he knew that a single minute of silence would give me the space I needed to ask what I really wanted to know. And I let him talk. Until we reached my door. We stopped there, and I found myself hesitating. Should I invite him in? Would that be weird? Too forward. But before I could decide, he took a step back. "Good night, Sam," he said softly, that usual guarded calm sliding back into place. Something inside me buckled. I couldn't let him leave. Not without asking. "What is a forever?" I blurted out. It stopped him in his tracks. His back stiffened, and when he turned to look at me, his expression had cooled. "A forever what?" he asked. I crossed my arms, already feeling my eyebrows arch. "One thing you need to know about me, Kai, I'm stubborn. So, either you tell me, or I start asking everyone. Elaine. Her husband. Margaret. Hell, I'll ask the entire pensioners' lunch club." He didn't answer. Just stared. I waited, keeping my chin held high. He stared at me, I watched the conflict in his eyes burn. I could tell he wanted to tell me, but something was holding him back. "Please," I said quietly. He pressed his lip tighter as if fighting an internal battle. "Do you want to come in?" I asked, this time, less challenge, more invitation. He didn't move for a second. I turned, walked up the short step to my front door, and opened it. I didn't look back as I stepped inside, but I left the door open. I heard it close behind me, unsure if he had followed me in. In the living room, I sank onto the sofa, kicking off my shoes and tucking one leg underneath me. I kept my gaze on the doorway. A moment passed. Then he stepped into the room and sat beside me. He looked around, quiet again now, his eyes taking in the space. From where he sat, he could see everything, my open-plan living and dining area, my tiny kitchen in the corner, and down the hallway, my bedroom. With the door open, my bed was visible through it. "Thank God I made it this morning," I thought wildly. Kai sighed, rubbing a hand across the back of his neck. He looked tired now. The day's events, or maybe my question, weighing on him. "What would you like to know?" he asked, not looking at me. "You said the river speaks to me. I think you knew about the bird. You seemed surprised to see me there," I said, putting puzzle pieces together as I spoke. "Then, what is a forever?" He didn't answer right away. The silence stretched. When I was just about to repeat my question, he looked at me. His expression wasn't cold. It wasn't even guarded. It was sad. "It's complicated," he said quietly. "But I'll try. If you really want to know." I nodded, heart thudding. I leaned over and pulled a blanket over our legs. He leaned back, exhaling slow. "I am a forever," he stated. He studied my blank expression. "Forevers are connected to the land. When the land is healthy, so are we. When it's damaged, we suffer too." He looked at me like it should make perfect sense, his lips tugging downward slightly as I didn't react immediately. As he continued looking into my eyes, my heart fluttered, warmth washed over my face, trying to steady my breathing. What do you mean?" For a moment, Kai didn't answer. His gaze softened. "You're starting to notice, aren't you?" he murmured, eyes drifting toward the river. "The strange occurrences. The way the river calls to you. It's not just the wind, Sam. It's of the land and of the water. And it's the same that flows through me." I leaned back, heart pounding. "You're not making sense. You can't possibly mean. We are guardians of the land, of the rivers, of the earth itself. The forevers have existed for centuries, keeping the balance between nature and the human world. Our connection is ancient, unbreakable." But he hesitated. "It's also forbidden for us to bond with humans." My mind reeled. A forever. What did that even mean? But why me? I asked, my voice barely steady. Why would the river or you call to me? Kai's eyes narrowed slightly, as if searching for the right words. Because you have the same bond with the land, Sam. You may not realize it yet, but it's always been there. Let me guess, when you were younger, animals used to come to you. Injured ones. My mouth dropped open. How do you know that? He shrugged his answer. I closed my eyes seeing all the sick birds, limping foxes, tiny creatures that somehow always found me. My dad and I would care for them together. But after he died, they stopped coming. I told myself it was coincidence. A part of growing up. But now I wasn't so sure. I used to bring them home, I whispered. My dad and we'd help them. But after he died, it stopped. I never saw them again. Kai's eyes softened. An acknowledgement of something flickered behind them. It wasn't your fault, he said gently. You grieved. And so did the land. But the connection you had is still there, waiting for you to rediscover it. It's in your blood. My thoughts were spinning. Blood? What kind of connection? Kai leaned closer, lowering his voice. The land is alive, Sam. It's changing. The balance is shifting, and we're meant to protect it. That's why I'm here. But the connection between us, he paused, has consequences. What kind of consequences? I asked, feeling my throat tightening. He looked distant, almost sorrowful. If the land suffers, so do we. If the water is poisoned or destroyed, we feel it. But there's more. I'm not just a forever. I'm part of the river family. This waterway is mine to protect. I nodded slowly, though my head was spinning. I'll give you a minute, he said, glancing toward the kitchen. Want a tea? I nodded again, automatically. A reflex. He stood, calm like he hadn't just upended the entire fabric of my reality and disappeared into the kitchen. I stared at the blanket on my lap. The fabric was soft, but it anchored me. Something solid to hold on to. Because none of this made sense. He expected me to believe he was, what? Some kind of mythical creature? Guardian of the river? Spirit in human skin? It was insane. Except it didn't feel insane. I wasn't someone who believed in signs. I believed in reality. But I'd also felt something the moment I met him. Something too sharp to be coincidence. The pull in my chest that didn't go away when I left the water but grew louder. Maybe I wasn't losing my mind. Still, I couldn't say it out loud. Not yet. If I admitted, even in my own head, it would become real. And real things had consequences. I heard him return. I took a deep breath and pressed my fingers tighter into the blanket, grounding myself in softness. In questions. In the quiet before the truth. His words echoed, this bond has consequences. My heart skipped. Your bonded partner? I asked suddenly. Kai didn't look at me. He poured a little milk into a mug. Where do you want your tea? I stood, placing my hands on my hips. Kai, I said. My voice shook a little, but it thrilled me to say his name. He smiled slightly, almost knowingly. Samantha, he replied. I've been asked to step up, to take my brother's place as head of the family, he said, turning serious again. But I won't do it. Not until I find my bonded partner. Maybe not even then. I blinked. You're? He returned to the sofa and sat beside me. The cushion dipped beneath his weight. He took my hands in his touch warm and steady. The elders believe our bonded partner should be another forever, someone from a different family with a bond strong enough to match ours. Bonding with a human weakens the bloodline. That's what they believe. But I won't lead alone. I won't choose until I find someone who shares the connection. Someone who feels the same pull. My pulse quickened. Was he saying? A strange heat bloomed in my chest, like the air had shifted, charged with something ancient, something magic. But fear clawed its way up too. But we can't, I whispered. You said it yourself. It's forbidden. Kai leaned in, his eyes locked on mine. It's forbidden. Not impossible. The question is, are you truly human, Sam? Or is there some forever in your bloodline? My breath caught. The connection to the river. The animals. The way Kai felt familiar before I ever really knew him. Sam, he said gently. Be honest with me. Do you feel it? If I'm wrong, tell me now. I opened my mouth but nothing came out. My head was spinning. My chest ached with the pressure of too many thoughts. He released my hands gently. I closed my eyes, trying to calm the storm inside me. His voice echoed in my mind, the connection you once had is still there, waiting for you to rediscover it. I'd always been drawn to the wild, to the stillness of water, the hush of trees. But this was something else. Deeper. Real. Terrifying. I opened my eyes. He was watching me. I feel it, I said quietly. Relief flickered in his expression, but I held up my hand. But I need time. This is a lot. Please understand. He smiled, soft and sad. I understand. Take the time you need. He rose from the sofa. Get some rest. I nodded, still trying to process. Before I could say anything else, he leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead. It was tender, warm, and somehow even more intimate than anything else he could have done. I'll see myself out, he said. And then he was gone. The morning light filtered through the blinds in soft ribbons, casting long stripes across the floor. I stirred, the weight of sleep clinging to me. My neck ached from the awkward angle, still curled up on the sofa, blanket half draped across me. I hadn't even made it to bed. I sat up slowly, brushing hair from my face. Everything from last night flickered through my mind in flashes. Kai's words, his touch, the kiss on my forehead. It all felt like a dream, but the heaviness in my chest told me it wasn't. Tap. 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 I stilled. The sound came again, delicate but persistent. I turned toward the window. A shape sat just outside on the sill. At first, I thought it was a dog, or maybe a large cat. But as I stepped closer, I saw it clearly. A fox. But not like any fox I'd seen before. Its fur was dark, not just red but almost black, with silver glints that shimmered as it moved. It was watching me, head tilted slightly, ears perked like it had been waiting. I hesitated, then unlatched the window and slowly pushed it open. The fox stepped inside without a flicker of hesitation. Its paws landed softly on the wooden floor. It didn't startle. It didn't run. It looked up at me. Okay, I murmured. I'm officially dreaming. The fox blinked. I crouched down. You're not afraid of me? It stepped forward. I held out a hand, unsure if it would bolt, but it didn't. It sniffed my fingers, then leaned its head into my palm, just briefly, before pulling back again. Something shifted in my chest. You're not just a fox, are you? I whispered. You came for a reason. It didn't answer, of course. But its gaze didn't waver. There was something old in its eyes. Something that seemed to know. I don't know what's happening to me, I admitted, softly. Everything's changing. The river, the land, Kai. I trailed off. And now you. The fox circled me once, brushing its tail lightly against my leg, then sat again, its eyes locked onto mine. I can feel it. All of it. The air, the water, it's pulling at me, I said, hearing my voice trembling. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do. The fox tilted its head, almost like it was nodding. Its ears twitched once, then it turned toward the open window. You're not staying. It looked back at me, and I swore I could feel the answer in my gut. Not yet. Not until you're ready. It stepped lightly onto the sill, paused, and gave one last look. I'll see you again, won't I? The fox blinked once, slowly, deliberately, then leapt from the window and disappeared into the quiet morning. I stood there for a long time, heart pounding in my chest, the breeze curling around me like a whisper. I didn't know what was coming. But whatever it was, I wasn't alone anymore. I dressed slowly, each movement feeling heavier than it should. My body had rested, but my mind hadn't. It buzzed with fragments of memories, Kai's words, the fox's eyes, the pulse I now felt in the earth beneath my feet. I needed space, quiet. I needed the river. The museum doors were still locked as I passed, taking the long way round, letting my feet carry me down the familiar winding path toward the water. The river glinted in the morning light, soft and silver. I stood at the edge, letting the breeze wash over me, and for a moment, everything was still. But something shifted. A flicker under the surface. Shadows. Moving. I squinted. There was nothing there, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling they were watching me. Can this all really be true? The thought made my chest tighten. If I was to believe, truly in what he has said, then the complexities of their magic, the bond to the land, it touched everything now. The river. The trees. The animals. Nothing felt separate anymore. And worse, I was beginning to see how it was all at risk. But even that wasn't what terrified me the most. No, it was Kai. It was the way his presence stirred something deep in me, something I'd not felt before and had no words for. The way I leaned toward him without realizing it, how my skin remembered his touch even when he wasn't there. I couldn't stop the feeling, but I was terrified of what it meant. What if this bond could destroy everything? The museum blurred past me in a haze that afternoon. I gave the tour, smiled at all the right moments, answered questions. But I wasn't really there. As soon as I could, I slipped away and wandered back down to the river's edge, needing to breathe, to be alone with the sound of water and wind. But I wasn't alone. I didn't hear him approach, I just felt him. "Kai," I said softly, before even turning. Sam, his voice was warm and quiet, like the river itself. I glanced over my shoulder. He stood beside me now, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. "I had a visitor this morning," I said, my voice low. "A fox. Dark fur, silver in the light. It came right through my window." Kai's eyes lit up. "You're starting to believe." I looked away, swallowing. I don't know what to believe. He stepped closer, slowly. "That fox came to you because you're opening. The land responds when it's seen. When it's felt. You're part of that now." There was a pause. The wind picked up, tugging at my hair. I didn't step back. "I know this is a lot to take in," Kai said. "I didn't expect to put all of this on you so quickly. But I won't hide the truth from you. This bond, it's not just about us. It's about the river, the land, the very earth we live on." I turned to face him fully, confusion thick in my voice. "I don't understand. How can a bond between two people affect the land?" "When a forever bonds with someone," he said, eyes holding mine, "the land feels it. The waters shift. Trees bloom. Storms calm. It's all connected. And when that bond is true, it heals us and the land. But it's not without cost." I shook my head slowly. "You said it's forbidden." "The elders fear what they can't control. They believe a bond between a forever and a human threatens our balance. But the balance is already breaking. The land is sick, Sam. My family is weakened under my brother's control and it's turning to new connections. This is more than the old rules. It needs new strength. New connection. You." I stared at him, heart racing. He smiled, faint and sad. "I was sent here to protect the waters. But I can't do it alone. I've been waiting for the one who would stand beside me. The one who feels the land the way I do." He took another step toward me. We were inches apart now. My breath caught in my throat. "I don't know if I can be that person," I whispered. "You don't have to decide now," he said gently. "But when you do," his hand brushed mine. I looked down, then back up, drawn in by the pull between us. That magnetic thing, that gravity I couldn't escape. He leaned in just slightly, and I mirrored him without meaning to. Our foreheads nearly touched. The world narrowed down to the space between us. The wind held its breath. The river stilled. Was he going to kiss me? I wanted him to. But the moment stretched, and passed. He pulled back just enough, eyes never leaving mine. "I'm here," he said. "When you're ready." And he stepped away. But the echo of him stayed with me. In my skin. In my bones. In the earth beneath my feet. The moment Kai walked away, the air seemed colder. I stood by the river for a long while, watching the water slide past like time itself. The things he'd said clung to me like mist, impossible to hold, but impossible to ignore. I needed to talk to someone. But who? I thought of Margaret, stern, unreadable Margaret, and dismissed the idea instantly. Then Elaine floated into my mind. The excuse was easy enough. Check on the bird. Simple. And maybe I could find a way to ask. Decision made, I turned to head toward Elaine's cottage, but didn't get far. Margaret was waiting for me just beyond the gate, arms folded tightly, lips pressed into a thin line. Her sharp eyes locked onto mine like a hawk spotting prey. I froze. "Afternoon," I said, trying for polite. My voice sounded thin, uncertain. Margaret didn't return the greeting. "You don't know what you're poking your nose into," she said, voice low but brimming with restrained anger. "There are things here that run deeper than you understand. And you do well to stay out of them." "I'm not poking around," I said, holding her gaze. "I live here. I work here. And I care about this place." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't belong here, Samantha. Not in the way you think." "You mean not forever?" I said. "Because that's what this is really about, isn't it? Bloodlines and control." Her jaw tightened. "It's about balance. The land remembers what happens when outsiders meddle with it." I took a step closer. "I'm not meddling. I'm listening. The river called to me before I even knew what you were hiding." Her breath caught, just slightly. But she recovered fast. "Kai doesn't belong to you," she said coldly. "I'm not trying to own him," I said, my voice rising. "But you're trying to control him, just like you control everything. The family, the narrative, the fear. I'm protecting what's sacred." "No," I said, stepping fully into the space between us. "You're protecting your grip on a world that's already changing. And you're afraid. Not of me, but of what letting go would mean." Margaret's expression faltered for a beat. Her eyes, normally sharp and certain, looked suddenly tired. "There's more at risk than you know," she said, and for the first time, I heard something else in her voice. Not anger. Not pride. Grief. "Then tell me," I said quietly. "Help me understand. If there's danger, I want to protect the land too. But you won't even let me try." "You weren't chosen," she whispered. "Not by us." I softened, just barely. "Maybe not by you." She just looked at me for a long, long moment, something unreadable flickering behind her eyes. Then she turned. "Don't go running to Elaine for answers," she said, the cold edge back in her voice. "Some truths don't want to be dug up." She walked away without another word, her boots crunching the gravel with sharp finality. And I stood there, heart pounding, realizing something I hadn't before. She wasn't just trying to protect the river. She was trying to protect herself from what the river might reveal. My hands were trembling slightly. It felt like a warning and a threat all at once. I forced my legs to move, swallowing the tight knot in my throat as I made my way to Elaine's. Elaine greeted me at the door with her usual warm smile. If she sensed something was off, she didn't mention it. "I thought I'd check on the bird," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Just wanted to make sure he's still okay." "Come in, then," Elaine said, already stepping aside to let her through. The little bird was resting near the window, perched on the edge of a wooden bowl, and the moment it saw me, it chirped and fluttered its wings like a greeting. I smiled despite myself. "Well, hello." "He's missed you," Elaine said softly. I felt her watching me with interest. Had she noticed the change in me? I crouched down, letting the bird hop closer. I reached out a finger, and it nudged my hand gently with its head. The connection was unmistakable and unsettling. I glanced up at Elaine, words forming and dissolving on my tongue. I wanted to ask. About Kai. About the bond. About the land. But the weight of Margaret's warning still clung to me. The words wouldn't come. "I should head into town," I said eventually, forcing a smile. "Need to pick up a few things." Elaine nodded. "Of course. Be safe, Sam." The streets of town were quiet, the soft hum of daily life trickling around me. I ducked into the market, picked up a few essentials, then wandered down the road, looking in the various shop windows mindlessly, not ready to go home yet. As I passed the small cafe by the corner, I heard a burst of laughter. The pensioners' group was gathered around a large table, teacups and saucers clinking. I recognized a few faces, including Esther. The one I'd met before, the one with the gentle eyes and strange, pointed glances. Esther spotted Sam and waved me over. "You look like you could use a bit of cake," she said, smiling kindly, and then patted the seat next to her. The group welcomed me in with teasing questions about the museum and the latest tour mishaps. It was warm, familiar, but I couldn't quite relax. The older woman watched me with an expression that said she saw more than I was saying. After a while, the woman leaned closer and whispered, "Would you mind walking me to the hat shop? My knees aren't what they used to be." I nodded, grateful for the escape. "Of course." They walked slowly, the cobbled path a little uneven beneath their feet. "You've got that look," Esther said eventually. "Like the land's gone and whispered something in your ear and now you're trying to pretend you didn't hear it." I stared ahead, surprised into silence. "I've seen it before," Esther continued, her voice wistful, "a long time ago. When you start to see too much, feel too much, it can be overwhelming. Makes you question everything." I glanced at her. "You know something, don't you?" The woman didn't answer directly. "You don't have to understand it all yet. Just don't walk away from it. If something rare has been given to you, don't let it slip through your fingers." We stopped in front of the hat shop, the window lined with sun-faded straw brims and velvet cloches. I hesitated. "Did you ever lose someone?" I asked quietly. Esther didn't speak for a long moment. Then she nodded. "A very long time ago. And not in the way people think." She turned to me, her eyes soft but clear. "I came close, but I wasn't chosen. Those rules, you know. But I knew what it meant to be near it. To feel the land breathing with someone. I felt the pain when it stopped. My throat tightened. What should I do?" Esther smiled sadly. "You already know. You're just scared to trust it." She reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face like a grandmother might. "Whatever you do, don't let it get away. Not if it's real." The heat had settled over everything like a thick blanket, slow and stifling. By late morning, the museum was practically empty, no footsteps echoing through the stone halls, no curious voices drifting from room to room. Just the soft hum of the fans and the weight of the summer sun pressing against the windows. Elaine stood at the front desk, lazily fanning herself with a folded-up pamphlet. "It's Dad," she said with a frown. "Go on, go home early. Do something fun. You've earned it." I blinked at her. "Fun? Yeah, you remember that, don't you?" she teased. "Take a swim. The lake's probably busy, but the water will feel like heaven." "I haven't been swimming in years," I said. "And I don't even have a swimsuit." Elaine just laughed, that warm, no-nonsense kind of laugh. "We have a gift shop, silly. I think the green one will flatter you most." I rolled my eyes, but I smiled too. A few minutes later, I was slipping out the back door, an oversized bag with a mat, towel and my bits stuffed in, slung over my shoulder. The walk along the river was peaceful. When I reached the lake, I stood looking for a spot to sit. The lake sat just off the main curve of the river, nestled in a wide, circular basin that felt almost man-made, but not quite. Its shape was too neat, too deliberate, like nature had paused for a moment and smoothed its edges with intention. The shoreline sloped gently downward, offering a soft, easy entry. Sand gave way to patches of grass, then reeds that swayed gently in the breeze. Small tufts of clover and wildflowers dotted the bank, blending into worn trails where kids had clearly run barefoot again and again. It was the kind of place that welcomed you, not with grandeur but with a quiet, open ease. Set back from the water, a curved stretch of pavement looped around the lake, just wide enough for strollers, bicycles, or the slow shuffle of someone carrying too many picnic bags. Families gathered there in clusters, towels spread out across the grassy patches, the air filled with laughter and the slap of feet hitting water. I found a quiet patch of grass and laid out the mat, then turned to the water. With the sun hot on my back, it called me in, so I slipped off my dress and stepped into the lake. The water was cool and sharp at first, then soothing. I waded deeper, the sounds of laughter and splashing fading into the background as I floated further out. The sun warmed my face, the water cradled me. For the first time in days, I felt calm, the water washing away any tension that had been building within me. Then I felt it. That pull. That shift in the air. I turned, and there he was, swimming in my direction. He moved through the water like he belonged to it. Like the river had shaped itself around him. Smooth, effortless strokes pulled him forward, hardly disturbing the surface. It wasn't showy, just natural. Like breathing. Like instinct. As he neared, sunlight caught the water sliding down his arms, bare, strong, defined in a way I hadn't noticed before. His skin was slick and golden in the light, muscles flexing with each movement, and I caught myself staring before I could look away. He slowed, then stopped just a few meters from me, the water lapping softly around him. His blonde hair was pushed back, droplets clinging to his lashes. There was something wild about him in that moment, not untamed, but free. Untouchable. "I didn't expect to see you here today," he said. A quiet smile touched his lips. I shrugged, trying for casual, though my pulse had its own ideas. I didn't really have a choice. Elaine practically forced me out the door, so I thought I'd come see what all the fuss is about. His smile widened just a fraction. "And? What's the verdict?" I didn't answer right away. I was still watching the water slip down his shoulders, the way he floated so still, like the lake trusted him. Like it knew him. Still deciding, I said finally, but my voice came out softer than I meant it to. "And I wasn't just talking about the water." His answering beam took me by surprise. Out here, in the middle of the lake, with strangers scattered along the banks and laughter echoing across the water, it somehow felt like no one else existed. Just him. Just me. The lake holding us in a quiet kind of suspension, like the world had pressed pause. The sunlight danced around us, catching in the ripples, but all I could see was him. The steadiness in his gaze. The way his smile softened into something quieter, something meant only for me. "You feel it, don't you?" he asked, his voice low. Serious now. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Because I did feel it. That hum in the air. The pull between us. Something older than either of us, tugging at the space we'd left between. But saying it aloud, that would make it real. So, I just looked at him, heart thudding in my chest, and nodded. It's louder now. Constant. Like something's waking up. Kai floated closer, the space between us narrowing until I could see the sunlight dancing across his skin. It is. The river. The land. They recognize you. They feel the bond forming. I looked down at our hands beneath the water, barely brushing. I don't know what that means. Not really. It means the magic sees you, he said. It sees us. When a forever bonds with a human, it's not just between two people. The land responds. The water. Everything. And if I walk away? I asked. My voice felt smaller than I meant it to. He paused, just for a second. Then the land goes quiet again. But it won't forget you. And neither will I. I swallowed hard, my heart caught somewhere between fear and something softer, something deeper. The lake shimmered around us, the surface like glass, the world too bright and too quiet all at once. "I'm scared," I whispered. I know his hand found mine fully this time, our fingers lacing together beneath the water. "But you're not alone." And even with the sounds of the lake buzzing around us, I felt still. Like I was standing on the edge of something enormous. Not just change. A choice. And as the water lapped gently against my shoulders, I could feel it in my chest, in my bones, in the ground beneath us. Something was waking up. And it knew my name. Finally, I looked at Kai, my heart pounding in my chest. "What do we do now?" "That's up to you," he said. My chest rose and fell too fast, heart hammering as I drifted closer. The space between us shrank until the water barely whispered between our skin. I could feel it now, the thrum of something ancient curling through the lake, through us. The magic didn't just live in the land, it watched. It waited. Kai was still, like he didn't dare move. Like he might shatter the moment if he did. And then, I leaned in, my lips finding his. His arm slipped around my waist, firm and careful, as he pulled me gently closer. Our bodies met, a press of warmth and skin and held breath. I forgot how to float, how to think, how to exist beyond the feel of him and the taste of the lake on his lips. When the kiss deepened, he didn't let go. Instead, he began to move, floating backward through the water with me held tight against him. My fingers curled instinctively around the back of his neck as we drifted farther from the crowded shore. The noise dimmed. The sunlight seemed softer here, the water darker and deeper where the lake met the river. He stopped, lips parting from mine just enough to whisper, "Do you trust me?" I nodded, breathless, and before I could ask why, he spun me. My back hit his chest, and strong arms locked around me, and then we were sinking. No dropping. Under the water. The world rushed away in a blur of bubbles and cold. Panic flared, instinctive and bright, but then, I realized I could breathe. There was air. A bubble of it, barely an inch from my face, surrounding us like a second skin. I gasped and laughed at once, the sound swallowed by the water. Fish flitted close, curious, iridescent scales catching stray light. It felt like the lake itself was alive, watching with eyes I couldn't see. And then he pulled me upward, breaking the surface. As the air hit my face, I blinked against the light, my skin buzzing, my whole body still humming with the kiss and the magic in him. He let me go gently, and I turned to face him, stunned. His eyes weren't blue anymore. They sparkled gold, alive with the magic of the lake, of something deeper. Something forever. I forgot to tread water. I sank. He caught me again without effort, pulling me up until I was cradled in his arms, held high above the surface. I realized how close we were, how my legs tangled with his, how still he was. "How are you not sinking?" I whispered. He just smiled and leaned in, tenderly kissing me again. We stayed at the lake for hours, letting the afternoon stretch around us like it had no end. The sun moved slowly across the sky, drying the water on our skin, painting everything in soft gold. We talked about the museum, he told me his river stories, about food, weather, music. Then nothing at all. The kind of quiet that didn't need to be filled. At some point, I forgot to be cautious. Time blurred in that gentle way it does when you're not paying attention, when every glance feels like a secret and every laugh lands just a little deeper than expected. Only when the sky turned dusky and pink did we realize how still the lake had become. The families had packed up, the air now threaded with the smell of someone's leftover barbecue. My stomach growled, loud and completely ungraceful, and I laughed, startled out of the spell. "I haven't eaten all day," I admitted. Kai sat up, brushing water from his hair. "Come back to mine," he said. "Let me cook for you." I hesitated for half a second before nodding. "Okay." As we packed up and began walking, I realized I had no idea where his place was. We followed the river, the museum just coming into view when he veered off, tugging me gently in another direction. Down a winding path, half hidden by weeping willows, was a dock. And at the end of it, a boat. Of course. He lived on the river. Why did that not surprise me? But when I ducked my head to step inside, I froze. I had expected cramped. Maybe cozy. Not this. The ceiling stretched up, double height. Most of the boat's living space extended below the waterline, and one entire wall was made of glass, revealing the river beyond. Fish swam past lazily in the late light, reeds swayed like dancers, and the whole place felt like it had been carved out of a dream. It was long and open plan, a kitchen and living space filled the main area, warm wood and soft lamplight everywhere. Behind that, 2 doors, he pointed. "Left is the bathroom," he said. "Right's my room." I nodded, heat blooming in my face. I sank onto a stool by the kitchen counter, watching as he moved through the space like he belonged there, barefoot, towel slung over one shoulder, pulling ingredients from cupboards with easy grace. He chopped vegetables, tossing them into a pan. "Do you eat meat?" I asked, mostly to fill the quiet. Sometimes, he said. But I prefer not to. Is that an issue? I shook my head. No. Just wondering. Dinner was simple but delicious: grilled halloumi, roasted peppers, something spiced and sweet with chickpeas. Afterward, we curled up on the couch, shoulders pressed together, plates forgotten, the boat gently rocking beneath us. Outside, the river was dark now. Still. I watched the water, mesmerized by the slow dance of shadows across the glass. Then, movement. Not fish. Not boats. Something else. Shapes, sleek and unfamiliar, gliding just beneath the surface. My body tensed. "Kai," I whispered. "What's that?" He turned to look, his expression instantly taut. "The others," he said quietly. My stomach twisted. He faced me fully now, a flicker of something unguarded crossing his features, something close to fear. Or maybe regret. "They know about us," he said, voice barely audible. I swallowed hard. And? His hand reached up, fingers gentle as they brushed against my jaw, cupping my face like I might slip away. "Trust me," he murmured. "The river will let us know what to do." Before I could answer, he leaned in, and everything stopped. The kiss was soft at first; as it deepened, the heat bloomed under my skin. I felt the land, the water. The ancient pulse of something awake and listening. Light shimmered behind my eyes, and the river's song rose, not sound, but sensation. It wrapped around us, through us, until I could no longer tell where my body ended and the world began. I trembled against him, overwhelmed by the rawness of it. When we finally pulled apart, I gasped. "I felt it," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I felt everything." Kai nodded, his face aglow with wonder. So did I. And in that moment, I knew, I wasn't just a girl anymore. I was part of this. The magic. The land. Him. And whatever was coming next, we'd face it together. I looked out across the water, but the shadows were gone. Vanished. "Kai," I said quietly, my voice barely steady. "You've been holding back." I felt it. I know there's more. The magic still hummed through me, a current in my blood, bright and wild like a song I'd always known but never learned. But the moment was tinged now, sweetness laced with something sharp. Reality. The elders would not be pleased with what we'd just done. And despite the beauty of the connection we'd shared, a tight knot of fear twisted in my gut. When I looked into Kai's eyes, I saw it, the storm building behind them. He was unraveling, torn between who he was supposed to be and what we had become. "We've made our choice," he said, voice low, certain. "And yes, you need to know everything." We had crossed a line. One that couldn't be uncrossed. "You're right," he added, the calm in his voice fraying. "There's something else. Something I haven't told you. About my family. The elders. And my brother." My brow furrowed. I'd heard mentions of him before, Lucas. But always at a distance, like a name said with caution. A shadow no one looked at directly. Kai took a breath, chest rising like he was bracing for impact. "Lucas is Alpha of the River Reeve," he said. "But there was an accident. He's not as strong as he once was. My family wants me to take over." He'd still hold territory, but smaller, south of the crossing. I stayed quiet, sensing there was more. A lot more. "He's insulted by it," Kai continued. "He's always been the elders' favorite. Born to lead, born alpha. And now they're talking about me." He looked away, jaw tightening. "Lucas believes in the old ways. That our laws are sacred, that tradition is everything. That power must stay in the bloodline. Passed from alpha to firstborn, no exceptions." "And you?" I asked gently. "I never wanted it." He looked at me then, eyes shadowed but steady. "I've always believed we should follow the rules," but he hesitated. "A weakened alpha puts the entire family at risk." He rubbed his forehead. "I sometimes think that we shouldn't follow the rules just because they're old. The land is changing. The river's waking up. And I think, no, I know, that love, not tradition, is what will save us." He paused. "But Lucas doesn't see it that way. He thinks our connection to humans to you, Sam, is dangerous. That it'll destroy everything. My stomach twisted. So he'll try to stop us? Kai nodded. He already is. The silence that followed felt too big for the room. My heart pounded as his words sank in. He already is. Then, love. He'd said it. I froze. My breath caught. The word lingered between us, heavy and golden, like sunlight just before it sets. I knew it, of course, I had felt it long before now, but hearing it aloud sent sparks across my skin. I blinked, forcing myself to focus. Keep it together, I told myself. There was too much at stake to drown in feelings. What do we do now? I asked, barely above a whisper. Kai's lips pressed into a thin line. He looked out the glass wall at the dark water beyond, as if the river itself were listening. I have to go to them. My family. I need to try and convince them that what we have is real. That it's not something to fear. That sounds risky, I said. It is, he admitted. But it's the only way. I stared down at my hands, still feeling the warmth from his. My life had changed so quickly, tangled into something ancient and powerful and terrifying. But somehow, it all made sense. Like I was meant to be here. Like I'd finally stepped into the version of myself I was always meant to become. I looked up, heart steady. Then I'll stand by you, I said. No matter what comes next. I don't care what the elders think. I care about you. And I care about this place. The river. The land. What we can protect. Together. For a long moment, Kai just looked at me, I couldn't tell what he was thinking. Then, finally, a smile broke across his face. And I saw it, happiness. Thank you, he said, and I heard the weight of 100 unspoken things in those 2 words. You have no idea how much that means to me. When I woke, I was in Kai's bed. The sheets were soft against my skin, carrying a faint scent of salt and something distinctly him. I stretched beneath the covers, momentarily disoriented, until memories of the previous night surfaced. I had fallen asleep on the sofa, nestled against his side. He must have carried me here. The room was bathed in a gentle, dappled light that filtered through the expansive glass wall, casting fluid patterns across the ceiling. As I sat up, the view beyond took my breath away. It was haunting at night, but with the dapple morning light was stunning through the transparent walls, I could see schools of fish gliding gracefully, their scales catching the morning light in flashes of silver and gold. Tall strands of aquatic plants swayed with the current, creating a rhythmic dance that was both mesmerizing and calming. Occasionally, a curious turtle would drift by, pausing to peer into the room before continuing on its way. The underwater world was alive and vibrant, a hidden realm that felt almost dreamlike in its beauty. I glanced around the empty room, the absence of Kai's presence palpable. Slipping out of bed, I padded softly across the cool floor, the sensation grounding me. As I moved toward the living area, the panoramic view shifted. Sunlight filtered down from the surface above, creating shimmering beams that illuminated particles suspended in the water, turning them into tiny, floating stars. The gentle ebb and flow of the current pressed against the glass, a reminder of the vast, pulsing life just beyond this cocoon of air and warmth. Then I saw him sprawled on the sofa, his long legs draped over the edge, one arm shielding his eyes. His chest rose and fell in the steady rhythm of deep sleep. A soft ache blossomed in my chest at the sight. He had given up his bed for me, choosing the cramped confines of the sofa without hesitation. That quiet act of kindness pulled me deeper into feelings I wasn't sure I was ready to name. I tiptoed toward the bathroom, the coolness of the floor seeping into my feet, sending a slight shiver up my spine. Inside, I turned on the faucet, letting the water run as I splashed my face, hoping the chill would dispel the warmth that had settled in my cheeks. As droplets traced paths down my skin, a sudden noise shattered the tranquility. A voice, sharp, edged with anger, pierced through the serene cocoon of the underwater haven. I froze, every sense on high alert. The sound was muffled but unmistakable, seeping through the walls as he continued, his voice vibrating the small room I stood in. I pressed my ear against the bathroom door, heart pounding. Lucas. Anger laced with tension spitting out as he shouted at his younger brother. Kai's response came, calmer, steadier, a stark contrast to his brother's fury. The exchange was brief, ending in a heavy silence that left the air thick with unspoken tension. I remained against the door, my breath shallow. The confrontation had been about me, I was certain of it. The realization sent a ripple of fear through me. I hadn't thought about what he could do to me, at best get fired, and have to leave town, at worst. No, I refused to think about that. A gentle knock startled me. "He's gone," Kai's voice, soft yet reassuring, came from the other side. I opened the door to find him leaning against the frame, his hair tousled from sleep, eyes searching mine. He wore only a pair of loose shorts, hanging low on his hips, the casual intimacy of his appearance making my pulse quicken. The dim light accentuated the contours of his bare chest and stomach, each muscle defined and inviting. I resisted the temptation to run my fingers over his smooth skin and pushed the thought out. For a moment, words eluded us. His gaze traveled over me, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, something that sent heat coursing through my veins. "Morning," he finally said, his voice a warm caress. "You just missed my brother." He attempted a smile, an effort to lighten the mood, but the weight of the confrontation lingered between us. Yet, it wasn't Lucas's anger that had my heart racing, it was Kai. The proximity, the quiet intensity, the way his presence filled the space and my senses. "Why don't you take a shower?" he suggested gently. "I'll make breakfast. You can borrow something of mine to wear." I nodded, retreating into the bathroom, closing the door behind me. Leaning against it for a moment, I tried to steady my breathing, the events of the morning swirling in my mind like the currents outside the glass walls. The water was hot. Comforting. I let it run over me longer than I needed, trying to steady my thoughts. When I finally cracked open the door, towel wrapped tight, his voice called out, "I've left some clothes on the bed." A t-shirt and shorts, both too big for me, but soft and warm. When I stepped out, he looked at me and smiled, a soft, crooked smile. I saw the flicker in his eyes. He liked me in his clothes. We ate breakfast together in a comfortable silence, both ignoring what happened barely an hour beforehand. Like there wasn't a storm brewing around us. It was Sunday. The day stretched ahead, full of possibility. He offered to come with me to my place so I could change into something else. I agreed. After I changed, we headed straight to Elaine's. Lucas was already there. Elaine stood between them like a wall of calm trying to hold back a storm. But her eyes told a different story. Wary. Braced. Like she knew this wasn't going to end peacefully. The second Kai stepped through the doorway, Lucas turned, voice already raised. "So this is what it's come to." His words were like flint. "Dragging her into this too." Kai didn't flinch. "She's not a thing to be dragged anywhere. She's here because she wants to be." "She doesn't know what she's in the middle of," Lucas snapped. "She has no idea what's at stake." "And whose fault is that?" Kai shot back, calm slipping. "Maybe if you let me talk to her she would have chosen differently." "Don't you dare blame me," Lucas's voice boomed. "I tried, Kai. For years talking to you. But you ran. You always ran." "There's a difference in running and leaving. You should know that," Kai said. Their voices cut through the air, sharp and bitter. I stood just inside the doorway, trying to stay still, trying not to breathe too loudly. Lucas was taller than I expected, broader than Kai. There was no mistaking the resemblance. They had the same blonde hair, same eyes and the same sharp jawline, but Lucas's presence felt heavier. Like thunder building in the distance. Then I saw it. The scar. A jagged slash, winding from wrist to shoulder, angry and deep. His right arm hung stiff at his side, unmoving. The injury. The one no one talked about. I couldn't look away. Elaine must have noticed. Her gaze flicked to me, soft but warning. I quickly looked down. Then the conversation shifted. "Don't you see?" Lucas's voice dropped, but it didn't lose its edge. "She will be the end of you." My heart skipped. I wanted to step forward and shout at him, how dare he, could feel my anger boiling inside of me. Kai stiffened. "Don't start," he glanced at me. Our eyes locked, as if he knew my emotions. He was warning me to stay calm. Margaret was right, Lucas says. She's been right this whole time, Lucas continued, his eyes darkening. You never should have come back. You don't belong here. You blame me for leaving, and then when I return you tell me I should have stayed away, Kai snapped, throwing his hands into the air. And Margaret has no say in who belongs, Kai growled. And she sure as hell doesn't get to decide who I love. I feel Elaine's widened eyes fix on me. Had she realized the depth of emotion he had for me? That's rich, Lucas sneered. I remember you not being very impressed with my choice. I admit, I wasn't impressed with your choice of partner, but we can't choose who we bond with, he said pointedly. Lucas huffed and threw his good hand into the air. You talk to me about choices. From the man who disappeared while I bled out on that riverbank. Kai's expression cracked for the first time. I didn't know. If I'd been there. But you weren't, Lucas barked. And now you disappoint me more with this, he waved at me. I felt my eyes fill with water. Elaine stepped forward, her voice soft. Lucas, please, this child hasn't done anything wrong. She looks at me, her eyes full of sadness. But Margaret said, he started. Kai huffed, Margaret. That old witch. She's twisted everything, even your grief. None of this is Sam's fault. This won't weaken the family more than it already is. No one failed you. Lucas didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed locked on Kai, his jaw tight, chest rising and falling with every barely contained breath. Brother, go ahead and make your choices, he said finally. But don't expect anyone from the family to be involved with your life moving forward. He pushed past Kai, slammed the front door behind him. The silence he left behind was thunderous. Elaine didn't speak, but her eyes shimmered with grief, maybe. Or guilt. I couldn't tell. It clung to the room like mist, thick and unshakable. And me. I stood there, hollowed out. By the weight of what had just happened. By what I didn't yet understand, and what I suddenly did. Margaret wasn't just an annoyance. She was a force pulling strings from the shadows. And I was tangled in them. Elaine cleared her throat gently. Will you stay for lunch? Before I could answer, my phone rang. The sound sliced through the tension like a blade. I jumped, fumbling for it, eyes flicking to the screen. Charlotte. I offered a mumbled apology and stepped outside, lifting the phone to my ear. Hey, sis, I said, but my voice came out tight, cautious. Where are you? She asked, her tone clipped. Out. Why? I'm at yours. I blinked. What? Outside your flat. How long will you be? The breeze lifted my hair as confusion twisted through me. Wait, right now? Yes, she said flatly. Right now. I stepped back inside and explained. Elaine gave a small nod, concern flashing in her expression. Before I could say more, Kai stood. I'll walk you home. I didn't hesitate. Just nodded. The walk back was slow. Quiet. The weight of everything lingered between us, unspoken but felt. I could feel his hand in mine, warm, steady, but my thoughts were far away, spiraling. Charlotte was sitting on the steps when we arrived, tapping her phone with one leg crossed over the other. The moment she saw us, her eyebrows shot up, her gaze moving straight to Kai, eyes narrowing, appraising. Kai let go of my hand but leaned in, brushing a soft kiss against my cheek. Let me know when you're free, he said gently, voice low, and I'll come back. I nodded. When I turned, Charlotte was standing, her arms crossed, watching him disappear down the street. I see you've been busy, she said, lips twitching slightly. I could already tell, she was impressed. But no way was she going to admit it. Charlotte stood, arms folded, the wind tugging at the hem of her coat as she watched Kai disappear around the corner. Her gaze flicked back to me, sharp, searching. You gonna invite me in? She asked, tone clipped. I nodded, unlocking the door, heart still fluttering from Kai's kiss. She stepped inside like she was bracing herself for a fight. Okay, I said, turning to face her. What's going on? You didn't just come to check on me. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she paced the room, fingers twitching. When she finally stopped, she looked up, and I knew something was wrong. I've been talking to someone, she said, slowly. A woman named Margaret. The name hit me like ice water. You what? She reached out, Charlotte said quickly. A few days ago. She said she was worried about you. That you were caught up in something dangerous. Margaret, my voice cracked. She's Kai's brother's mother-in-law. What on earth could she say to make you drop everything and come rushing here? I didn't know that, Charlotte snapped. She told me about Kai, about the River family. Said you didn't understand what you were stepping into. That if I cared about you, I'd get you away from them. A chill ran down my spine. She's the one causing all this. She said that, I whispered. Charlotte nodded, avoiding my eyes. She said that people like you don't belong in their world. She talked about you like you were a piece of trash. That the family see you that way. That if you stay with him things will happen. Bad things. Not just to you. I stared at her, the words catching fire in my chest. You believed her? She shrugged. She sounded like someone who'd lost everything. I didn't think she was lying. So you came here, to what? I said quietly. To take me back. Charlotte looked like she wanted to deny it, but couldn't. I was worried. You are my baby sister, Sam. I came to bring you home. Before it's too late. We stood in silence. The air between us heavy with something old and sharp and breaking. And that was when I realized Margaret was willing to drag my family into this. She was more dangerous than I had imagined. I can't go, I said finally. I won't. Charlotte's face twisted. Please, Sammy, she used my old baby name with affection. I knew in her heart she thought she was doing the right thing, but she was wrong, so wrong. No, I said. Charlotte didn't respond right away. She crossed her arms tighter over her chest, her mouth pressing into a line like she was holding something back. What? I said. Say it. She hesitated. There's more. Margaret told me something else about Kai. I stilled. Charlotte's voice dropped. She said there were other girls. That things have happened before. Incidents no one talks about. She said that the family knows. And they all cover for him. My breath caught. My skin prickled. What kind of things? She didn't say exactly, Charlotte admitted. But she made it sound like he hurt them. Not always physically. But emotionally. Manipulation. Control. One of them left in the middle of the night. Disappeared. Margaret said she tried to warn people, but no one wanted to listen. A heavy silence pulsed between us. She told you all this and you believed her? I asked, quietly. I believed she believes it, Charlotte said. And that's enough for me to want you out of there. I stared at her. My mind spinning, searching, clawing for clarity. Then, the pieces started clicking together, slow and cold. But if she really cared, I said, voice steadying, if she really thought Kai was dangerous, why didn't she say something sooner? Why wait until now? Why whisper it to you, someone outside all of this? Charlotte opened her mouth, then shut it. And if she's so concerned, I continued, why didn't she do something with these other girls? Char, she's an evil old woman. I wanted to tell my sister everything, about the Forevers, how Kai's brother Lucas is losing power and how the elders want Kai to step up, that if this happens Margaret will lose the fraction of the power she has. But I kept quiet. Instead, I tried to think of how to explain without giving away the Forevers' secrets. My head hurt. I slumped onto the sofa, my head in my hands. Charlotte sat next to me. Why would she search me up and go to all this trouble over nothing, Sam? Can't you see there's more going on than you or I realize? I looked up, determined to end this now. Charlotte, she is a meddling, evil, nasty old woman. Kai's family, the ones I have met, are lovely, I say, trying to sound convincing. I am not in any danger. I hear the shaking my voice and hope she puts it down to my anger. Charlotte flinched. Then sank onto the edge of my sofa, as if the weight of it all had finally started to settle on her. I don't know what's true anymore, she whispered. I just didn't want to lose you. My voice softened. You haven't. But if I'm going to be safe, I need to make that decision for myself, not because someone fed you half-truths wrapped in fear. She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw the guilt in her eyes. The fear had cracked. The doubt had started to seep in. "I'm scared, Sam," she said. I didn't know what else to do. "I know," I whispered. "But I do. And I'm staying." We hugged goodbye, and I watched Charlotte slowly drive away, her car disappearing into the dusk. My head throbbed, a migraine curling like a serpent at the base of my skull, tightening its grip with every breath. I stood there in the stillness, hugging myself against the chill in the air. I tilted my head to the stars, whispered into the velvet dark, "She's gone." There was a long pause, then the quiet crunch of gravel. Kai stepped out from the shadows. He looked like someone who had been unmade, as if the very essence of him had been siphoned away by something ancient and cruel. His skin had gone ashy beneath the moonlight, eyes sunken, like he hadn't slept in days. But he had been fine only a few hours ago. His shoulders sagged, not just with exhaustion, but with grief that didn't belong to one night. Without a word, he followed me inside. We sat in silence for a moment, the air between us tight and brittle. Then I told him everything. About Margaret. About Charlotte. About the accusations. His expression changed slowly, like watching a storm roll over calm water. Quiet at first, and then violent. "She said what?" he asked, his voice low and trembling. I repeated it, feeling the weight of it again on my tongue. He stood, abruptly. Fury crackled through him like lightning. He didn't speak, he just grabbed his jacket and stormed out, slamming the door behind him with a finality that made my heart drop. I didn't sleep that night. I waited, curled up in the same spot, watching the door like it might open at any moment. It didn't. I began dressing as soon as the sun started to rise, and dragged myself into work, every step heavier than the last. My reflection in the museum bathroom startled me. My skin had taken on a grayish hue, my eyes dull, like someone had drawn a veil over them. My lips were cracked. He wasn't there. When I asked Elaine, she just gave a soft, strained smile. "He had a few jobs out of town," she said vaguely. "Picking up supplies, but I saw the way she avoided my eyes. The tension in her jaw. She was hiding something. That day felt endless. The river outside the window looked strange, flat, lifeless. The colors seemed off. The light muted. Even the museum displays looked dulled. Dust gathered where there should be sparkle. The carved wood creaked in protest beneath my fingertips, like it didn't want to be touched. That night, I barely moved from bed. The weight of the room pressed in like water, pressing against my ribs. Tuesday was the same, then Wednesday. On Thursday morning I walked straight into the workshop, found Elaine, and cornered her near the back storeroom. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice cracking. She turned slowly, her eyes scanning my face. For a long moment, she said nothing, just studied me. "You're looking a little under the weather," she said quietly. "Do you need a day off?" My stomach twisted and I walked away. I thought back to that afternoon at the lake. To the way time had softened around us. To his voice, easy and close. To the kind of quiet that asked nothing from me, and yet somehow gave me everything. It had been ordinary. Almost painfully so. And maybe that's why it stayed with me. Because it made something impossible feel like it could last. My heart ached for Kai. Doubt had begun to crawl into my chest like mist curling over the riverbanks, silent and suffocating. I kept replaying Charlotte's words, Margaret's venom, Lucas's rage. They all spun inside me like silt in a storm current. What if he was gone? By Friday, the ache had become physical. My body felt heavy, my limbs sluggish like I was moving through water too thick to breathe in. I woke up clammy, my skin pale and dull. I could feel the river withdrawing from me, like it didn't recognize me anymore. Like I had failed it somehow. I dragged myself out of bed anyway. Got dressed. Went to work. But after a week of little sleep, people noticed. I could feel their eyes. The boat hand tilted his head when I passed. One of the cleaners asked if I was okay and I lied, too fast, too sharp. Withdrawal. That's what it felt like. Not just heartbreak, not just sadness, something deeper, raw. Like my body had been stitched to his somehow, thread by invisible thread, and now every movement pulled those stitches loose. Kai had become part of me. His presence wasn't just something I craved, it had embedded itself in the rhythm of my days. In the way I moved through the world. The loss of him was a constant dull ache beneath the skin, a hollowness in my chest that no breath could fill. Everything around me whispered of him. The scent of driftwood and citrus, his shampoo lingering on the collar of the t-shirt I still hadn't returned. The sound of water lapping against the dock, like the river itself missed him. The breeze in the mornings, soft and warm, how it used to carry his laugh across the marina. The half-empty mug beside my sink, the extra toothbrush tucked in my cabinet. All of it his. He was part of everything good I'd found here. And now that he was gone it hurt. In the way my hands trembled when I tried to button my shirt. In the quiet that hummed too loudly in my ears. In the way food lost its taste and time lost its shape. Even the river, once my sanctuary, had grown still. I was unraveling. And I didn't know how to stop it. That afternoon, I caught sight of him through the museum window. He was in the boat shed, standing talking to one of the boatmen. My heart jumped so fast I nearly choked on it. I ran downstairs, cutting through the staff hallway and out the back door. But when I got there, he was gone. The air was thick with sawdust and ghosts. His absence hummed in the silence. I stood there for a long time, staring at the place he'd just been, like if I stayed still long enough, he might come back. He didn't. After work, I didn't even go home. I went straight to the dock. But his boat was gone. I stood there, staring at the empty space in the water, my hands trembling. I didn't even realize I was crying until I felt the tear slide down my cheek. Then I saw him. He was coming up the path, alongside Lucas. My heart leapt. I wiped my face and tried to smile. But then Kai looked at me. And my heart shattered. He looked awful. Pale, drawn, shadows under his eyes like bruises. But worse than that, he looked empty. Like whatever light he'd carried before had been snuffed out. They walked straight toward me, and I held my breath. "Hey," I whispered, barely able to find my voice. Kai didn't smile. "I just came to say it's over," he said. I blinked. "What?" "I can't do this anymore," he said, eyes fixed somewhere just beyond me. "Don't wait around. Don't come back here. If you stay at the museum, fine. But maybe think about finding something else. Something further from here." His voice was cold. Distant. Like I was nothing. I stepped forward. Why won't he look at me? I squinted up, desperate to catch his eyes, but they were elsewhere. "Kai, what are you talking about?" But he didn't answer. Lucas put a hand on his shoulder. Kai flinched under it but stayed silent. Then they walked away. And I couldn't move. That night, I barely made it to bed. The room was cold, my skin clammy, heart heavy. I curled beneath the blanket, pulling it up to my chin, shivering, not from the temperature, but from something deeper. A chill in my bones. In my soul. Then I felt it. The mattress dipped beside me, the faintest shift in weight. I turned, heart thudding, and there it was. The fox. Not a dream. Not a hallucination. Real, and yet not. Its coat shimmered, not like fur but like flowing water catching moonlight. It didn't look at me, just circled once and curled up beside me with the familiarity of something that had always belonged. My fingers trembled as I reached toward it. I didn't need to touch it. I just needed it there. Sleep took me before I could resist. Deep. Heavy. Otherworldly. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my room. I was standing in Kai's. I knew the curve of the walls, the scent of cedar and salt, the scattered sketches pinned up like memories too delicate to frame. Moonlight bled in through the porthole, silvering the edges of everything. He was there lying on his side, facing away from me. Still. His body curled in on itself like he was trying to hold something in. Or keep something out. I didn't speak. I just watched. And then the fox appeared again, padding silently across the floor. It sat beside me, then turned its head, golden eyes locking onto mine. "You are of the river," a voice whispered, not from the fox's mouth, but inside me, like a ripple moving through my blood. "You were never the threat," it continued. "You are the change. The room shifted, blurred, like the river itself had wrapped around the dream. Flashes, fragments of Kai's past. The moment he tried to stop Lucas from diving that day. The fire in his brother's eyes. The shame Kai carried like a second skin. I saw Margaret's cold gaze. The bargain made. The cost paid. And then I saw myself, standing at the river's edge, water lapping at my feet, glowing with something ancient. Something waiting. You must choose, the voice said. Love is not safe. But it is true. The fox rose, its tail brushing my hand. And then everything dissolved, like water slipping between my fingers. The dream didn't let go. Instead, it deepened, like I was being pulled beneath the surface of something ancient and hidden. The fox led me down a corridor of moonlight and I followed, barefoot and silent. We emerged entering a room I hadn't seen before. Larger than Kai's. A space carved from wood and time. I knew it was Elaine's. And I knew the voices before I saw them. Kai. Lucas. You had no right. Kai's voice was raw, frayed at the edges. You had no right to decide that for me. Lucas's reply was calm in that terrifying way still water hides its depth. I had every right. As Alpha. As your brother. As the only one left thinking clearly. She's not a threat. No. But Margaret thinks she is, and she has the council. She has leverage. I made a deal to keep the peace, to protect what's left of our family. You don't get to break that because you've lost your head over some girl. Kai let out a bitter laugh. Some girl? I've bonded with her, Lucas. Do you even understand what that means? Silence. Then Elaine's voice, soft but firm, the voice of someone carrying too much truth. He has. I knew it the day she touched the river and it sang. Kai turned to her, shoulders heaving. Then help me. Tell me there's something. I've made the potions, Elaine said gently, but they're only for the symptoms. There is no cure for a bond once it's begun. It can fade with time, but not if you're near her. You'll never sever it clean. Kai dropped into a chair like someone had cut the strings holding him upright. So that's it, he said. I just walk away? Lucas's voice again, colder now. No. You stay away. From her. From the lake. From the truth. The dream trembled. Shifted. And I was somewhere else again. Standing in front of Kai. He was sitting at the edge of his boat, staring out across the water, eyes rimmed with shadows. He didn't see me at first. Or maybe he did, but didn't believe it. Sam, he whispered, almost to himself. You're not real. I am, I said, stepping closer. You can't be. I've seen you every night since I left. You always look like this. Soft. Sad, he smiled bitterly. You always ask me to fight for you. And then you vanish. I wanted to touch him. But I was afraid I'd pass right through. Meet me, I said instead. Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. In the middle of the lake. Where we kissed. He looked up sharply, like something inside him flickered. A memory. A hope. You're not real, but sure. What's the harm in saying yes to a ghost? I opened my mouth to argue, but the world cracked. And I woke up. The fox was gone. The room was empty. But I was full of something I hadn't felt in days. Resolve. I looked at the clock, 8 a.m. My breath caught. I didn't feel the wind that tugged at the window panes as I threw on clothes, not caring what I wore, my hair still damp from sleep. As I strode towards the lake, I didn't notice the sky, the way it had darkened to steel. I didn't hear the storm warnings whispered by the trees. All I saw was the lake. By 8:40 I was there. Shoes forgotten. Bare feet kissing the muddy edge. It was quiet. Too quiet, but my mind was set. The clouds above churned like something ancient was waking. The surface of the water rippled with warning. But I didn't stop. I stepped forward. Into the cold. The water clutched at my ankles first, biting cold, wrapping around my skin like it wanted to drag me down. I didn't stop. Each step forward was a choice. A defiance. A promise. I waded deeper, the hem of my dress soaking up the water, hair sticking to my face as the wind picked up. The sky above cracked open with distant thunder, the kind that rolls slow and deep, like it's circling, waiting, watching. The center of the lake had never seemed so far away. The fox had told me I was part of this, that I belonged. But now the river was testing me. I could feel it in the shift of the currents, the sudden, subtle ripple beneath my feet. The water wasn't still anymore. It moved, pulling in strange, circular rhythms, like a heartbeat struggling to find its rhythm. When the water lapped at my stomach and the shivering began, I plunged in. Through teeth chattering, I swam forward. My arms ached, my clothes dragging me down. The rain started, slow at first, then harder, sharp little knives across my shoulders. The lake was no longer calm. Waves churned against me, small but deliberate. The current tugged harder, like fingers wrapping around my legs. The center shimmered ahead, only a few meters now, but it felt like the water was stretching, twisting, trying to push me back. My heart pounded. Kai, please, please come. The sky cracked with lightning, illuminating everything in one sharp breath, and for a second, I thought I saw something. A shadow on the opposite shore. But when I blinked, it was gone. The wind howled through the trees like the whole world was screaming. Water slapped against my neck. I struggled to stay upright, arms flailing against the chaos. And then, I was there, the center of the lake, the place where we kissed. I treaded water looking around for him. As I waited, the water changed. Before it had embraced me, but now it fought me. It pulled at my feet, spun beneath me like a whirlpool forming in secret. The lake was angry. For what was being taken from it. It was angry at me for not fighting. I felt the panic surging through me. I treaded water, gasping, screaming his name into the wind. But the storm swallowed it whole. Every inch of my being told me to escape, to try and swim back, but I stayed. I waited. The cold began to steel my limbs, one by one. My legs were numb, my arms barely responding. My lungs burned. I wanted to believe he was coming, that the dream hadn't lied, but the lake, I realized it didn't want me anymore. And still, I stayed, because love, real love, the kind that binds you to someone's soul, it doesn't let go that easily. Even when everything else does. Look, I wanted to scream at the lake, I am fighting for him now, help me, help us. But it wasn't listening anymore. I stayed too long. The ice was overwhelming me. It claimed my fingertips first, numb, useless. Then my legs. I tried to move, to swim, but my body wouldn't obey. Panic surged. I couldn't feel my feet anymore. The water rose higher, licking at my chin. I gasped and choked. The sky blurred above, silver and spinning. My arms slapped at the surface, trying to stay up, but the current caught me, sudden, strong. Something wrapped around my ankle. No. No, no, no. I kicked and flailed, but it was too late. The lake swallowed me whole. A scream died in my throat as the cold sliced through me. Down I went, arms thrashing, lungs burning. The water was too dark, too vast. I spun, disoriented, panicking, my chest screaming for air. I couldn't tell which way was up. Something touched me. Hands. Around my waist. For a moment, I thought it was the river itself, dragging me down. Then I felt it. Warmth. A sudden, fierce heat against the ice of the lake. A body against mine. Arms locking around me. Lips at my neck. I froze, not from fear, but because I knew that touch. That heat. That kiss, like a spark in the dark. Kai. Through the shadows, I saw him, his face haloed in light, eyes fierce, desperate. He pulled me closer, one hand tangled in my hair, the other steady at my back. Then he kissed me. And everything changed. The cold shattered away from me. The lake blurred away. We were falling still, but we were wrapped in warmth, in something deeper than skin. And then, suddenly, we weren't sinking anymore. We were standing at the bottom of the lake, wrapped in each other. A shimmering dome of air encased us, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The water above us crashing against the invisible barrier. We were deep, too deep, but we could breathe. Kai's forehead pressed to mine. I couldn't stay away, he whispered, voice hoarse and full of something wild. I tried. But I couldn't. I won't. Tears slipped from my eyes, trailing down, droplets tinkling on the lake bed. I cupped his face with trembling fingers. You came, I whispered. I'll always come, when you call me, he said. The bond that had called him back to me. I now knew in my heart that we were unbreakable. "Hold on," he murmured, his breath brushing my ear. "Wrap your legs around me." I didn't hesitate. My arms looped around his shoulders, and I let my legs wind around his waist, pressing us together in a way that made my heart stutter. He held me like I was the only thing that mattered, like the river had given me back to him and he wouldn't risk losing me again. We surfaced slowly, as though the lake was reluctant to let us go. Kai held me tightly, his arms strong and sure, maneuvering us through the dark water. We moved together through the water, cutting across the lake with effortless grace, like he was part of it. Like he belonged to it, and maybe now, I did too. His boat waited, docked in shadow, sleek and quiet like it had always been there. As we approached, I noticed the faint shimmer around it. It pulsed gently as we neared, recognizing him. Beneath the boat, hidden by the current, he pressed a hand to the underside. A hatch opened with a soft click, revealing a passage into the belly of the boat. I gasped. He carried me inside, through the water and into warmth, our bodies breaking the surface together into the secret space below deck. Everything was wrapped in golden, filtered light. The windows had been covered in thick fabric, muting the outside world. The air was warm, smelling faintly of cedar and salt in him. Kai gently set me down, but I was soaked through, the weight of the river still clinging to my chilled frame. My dress clung to me, my hair dripping onto the floor. He reached for a towel but paused, his eyes locked on mine. Neither of us spoke. We didn't have to. He took my hand, and we stepped into the shower together. Warm water poured over us, steam rising around our bodies like mist over the river. It rushed down our skin, washing away the lake, the fear, the cold. He touched my jaw, my collarbone, the edge of my shoulder. I leaned into him, my forehead against his chest, feeling his heat chase the last shivers from my spine. He held me there. Not tightly. Not possessively. Just completely. After a moment, he kissed my forehead and stepped back, reaching for a towel. "I'll leave some clothes on the bed," he said huskily. "I'll make you a warm drink." I nodded, water still dripping from my lashes. "And then?" I asked unsteadily, my voice barely above a whisper. He paused in the doorway, his silhouette haloed in the steam. "Then," he said, "we talk." I found the clothes folded neatly on the bed, soft cotton joggers and one of Kai's faded long-sleeved shirts. I slipped them on, still damp beneath, the warmth of the fabric clinging to my skin like a memory. The room was quiet, lit only by a single low lamp that cast golden shadows across the walls. I padded out barefoot, the wooden floor cool beneath my feet. My hair was still wet, curling around my shoulders as I followed the faint sound of a kettle boiling. He stood by the small stove, his back to me, a towel slung over his shoulders. The air was thick with the scent of mint and something darker, grounding. His presence filled the space like a heartbeat. He turned as I entered, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. Not like before. This was different. Stripped bare. The space between us was no longer full of questions, it was full of truths waiting to be spoken. He handed me the mug silently. Our fingers brushed. The warmth seeped into my hands, steadied me. I didn't want to do it, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never wanted to leave you like that." I nodded, wrapping my hands around the mug like it might hold me together. "I know." I saw. His brow creased. "You saw." "In the dream," I said, looking down. "The fox brought me. I watched you argue with Lucas. I saw how he ordered you." Kai sat across from me, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. He used his power as alpha. I had no choice. If I fought him, it would have torn the family apart. But it already did, I whispered. His eyes met mine, wounded, weary. "You're right. I didn't stop him. I let him send me away from the only thing that made me feel like myself." "You told Elaine you bonded to me," I said. He blinked, surprised. "You heard that?" I nodded. A silence stretched between us, heavy and humming. He reached out slowly, letting his fingers brush against my wrist. "It's true. I didn't mean for it to happen, but when I was near you, everything in me shifted. Like the river chose you, and through it, so did I. Tears prickled in my eyes. Why didn't you tell me? I thought I was protecting you, he said. From the family. From Margaret. From what it means to be with someone like me. My voice shook. And who decides what I can handle, Kai? You or me? He flinched. Then nodded. You. The moment hung between us, fragile and dense. Then he whispered, I missed you. Every minute. I felt like I was dying, I breathed. Like I was disappearing from the inside out. He stood and crossed to me in 2 strides. His hands found my face, thumbs brushing my cheeks. Can you forgive me? He asked, his eyes searching mine. Do you promise never to leave me again? I ask. I am yours, I will never leave you. His words an oath. I feel the weight of them take hold of me, wrap around my entire being. I am his, and he is mine completely. I don't want to wait anymore, I said, barely breathing. He leaned his forehead to mine. Then we don't. Outside, the water lapped gently against the dock, like the river itself was breathing in unison with us. We walked up to the river house holding hands. The wind had picked up, cold and sharp, but neither of us flinched. The door was already open. The family had been waiting. Margaret stood in the hallway, arms crossed, jaw tight. Behind her, the house loomed, familiar and strange all at once. Elaine sat in the corner of the living room, unmoving. She didn't speak, but her eyes tracked us with quiet fear, or maybe hope. I couldn't tell. A young, pale woman sat next to her, Lucas's wife, I guessed. The resemblance to Margaret was unmistakable. Lucas stood on the other side of the room with a group of men, none I recognized. You shouldn't be here, Lucas said. We're done hiding, Kai replied. If you want to resolve this, talk. If not, we'll leave you in peace. Lucas stepped forward. You think you're brave, coming here like this? He glared at Kai, then directly at me. No, I said. I think we're tired of being afraid of you. His eyes, sharp, full of hatred, locked on mine. This doesn't concern you. No, I said, my voice dry. You made it about me, so it does. Lucas opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. You blamed everyone but yourself, I said, my voice steady. The land. The river. Kai. Your wife. Me. Like everything that happened was done to you. His jaw tightened. But the truth. I stepped closer. You were the one who turned your back. The accident wasn't fate, it was your own carelessness. And everything since. That's on you. His eyes flicked toward mine, sharp and uncertain. You used me as an excuse, I continued. To justify your bitterness. To feed your anger. But the river doesn't punish, it reflects. And it showed me what you don't want to see, you abandoned it long before it ever turned from you. His face twitched, but he said nothing. You broke the promise to protect this land, I said. And then you let Margaret fill your silence with fear and blame. You chose control over connection. That is your weakness. Lucas turned to Kai then, ignoring me again, like he always did. You told her everything? Kai didn't flinch. No. Not a word, he said calmly. The river welcomed her, it's let her hear its secrets. It's you it turned from. And not because of what I did. Because of what you chose. Lucas recoiled slightly, like the words had weight. You were meant to protect this place. Our family. The river, Kai continued. But instead, you made a deal with someone who only ever wanted to keep power in her hands, no matter what it cost the rest of us. Lucas's hands clenched at his sides. You don't know what it was like. No, Kai said. But I know what it's like to lose everything. And still choose love. Still choose to stay, when it would have been easier to run. You have a wife who's still here, and you look right through her. Elaine stood, then. Quiet. Steady. She's right, Lucas's head snapped toward her. You've been drowning, Elaine said softly. And instead of reaching for help, you pulled everyone else down with you. The gathered men shuffled behind him, murmuring to each other in low whispers. Lucas looked at Kai. His voice, when it came, was hoarse. I thought I was doing what was right. For all of us. Kai's expression was unreadable. You weren't. You were doing what was easiest. Margaret stepped forward, her voice rising like a wave just before it crashes. You're letting her in. Her. This is a betrayal of everything we've built. Everything the river entrusted to us. She pointed at me with disdain. She's a weakness. A corruption. She'll tear this family apart. Can't you all see? I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I let the river rise in my voice and spoke with calm, steady truth. You keep talking about the river like it's yours. But it's not. It's older than you, deeper than you, and it chose me. That's what scares you most. Lucas didn't speak again. He just stood there, breathing hard, the weight of everything he'd lost pressed into the lines around his eyes. No one moved. Even the river outside seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, his wife reached out and placed her hand gently on his arm. Lucas, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He flinched, but didn't pull away. Her accent softened the edges of his name. I couldn't place it exactly. I miss you, she said. I miss the man I married. The one who listened. The one who loved me without needing to be more than he already was. Lucas didn't move. Didn't look at her. She swallowed, eyes flicking briefly to her mother, then back to him. I could see the way her fingers trembled as if she was gathering strength for what she was about to say. I know she raised me, she continued, quieter still. But my mother has never cared about my happiness. Only about legacy. Only about keeping power where she can see it. The room shifted. Something cracked. Margaret's eyes went wide, then wild. You ungrateful little, she hissed, lunging forward in a blur of motion. Her daughter gasped, instinctively stepping back, but it was Elaine who moved first, one hand raised, protective, sharp. Kai grabbed Margaret, pulling her back hard by the shoulders. Margaret twisted against his grip, then dropped. She collapsed to the floor with a gasp, hair loose, fury spilling from her like smoke. Lucas didn't react. He remained perfectly still. Sam turned just enough to see the elders, huddled near the corner. Wide-eyed. Whispering. Astonished. Their alpha hadn't protected his wife. Hadn't defended his blood. And in that silence, in that stillness, it became obvious, Lucas's power wasn't just fading. It was already gone. Kai's fingers brushed Sam's again. Steady. Solid. She turned toward him, and for the first time, she wasn't afraid of what came next. An elder stepped forward, the deep lines in his face the only sign of emotion. His gaze locked onto Lucas, and without hesitation, he placed a firm hand on his shoulder. We need to talk, he said. There was something in his quiet voice. Something final. Lucas didn't argue. Didn't move. The elder looked slowly around the room, his eyes passing over Margaret still crumpled on the floor, then settling briefly on me, on Kai, on Elaine. I felt it then. A silent command. Not harsh. Not loud. But clear. This conversation wasn't for us. Without a word, she turned. Kai followed, steady at her side. Elaine moved with them, one hand gently guiding Lucas's wife, who was trembling but upright, her expression unreadable, but her jaw set. We walked out together, the heavy silence of the house pressing at their backs. Behind us, the door clicked shut. We left hand in hand, the wind softening around us like it had shifted direction. Like even the land was beginning to let go of its old breath and take in a new one. That night, beneath a sky full of stars, Kai and I stood barefoot on the dock. The wood was warm from the day's sun, worn smooth by time and tide. The river whispered at our ankles, a soft hush, like it was listening. Above us, the moon hung low and silver, casting his hair in light. He looked almost otherworldly, but also completely real, more real than anything I'd ever trusted. I don't know what comes next, I said quietly. The truth of it sat raw in my chest. Kai didn't hesitate. We figure it out. Together. The wind curled around us, gentler now. Like it had hurt him too. And far out across the lake, a single ripple broke the surface. Small. Precise. Like something waking. Watching. I turned to him. My voice was steadier than I expected. No matter what happens, I said. I will be by your side. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me like he was seeing something he'd spent years searching for. Not just me, but what I carried. The courage. The bond. The promise. Then he smiled. This one was full. Fierce. Free. Like something inside him had finally come home. My love, he said, and the words fell like a blessing. I too will never leave your side. Epilogue. Summer was fading. The mornings came cooler now, edged with mist. Leaves had started to yellow at the edges. The town was slowing down, softening into autumn. The museum had grown quiet. Summer tourists gone. The rhythm gentler. Elaine moved through the exhibits with purpose, already planning the harvest displays and moonlight tours. She thrived in the turning seasons, her calm energy like clockwork, keeping everything gently moving forward. Kai and I walked the banks most evenings now, fingers loosely laced, saying little. We didn't need to speak to know what the other was feeling. The connection between us wasn't loud, it pulsed quietly, like the heartbeat of the land beneath our feet. Lucas was gone. Sent to the deep waters, where the elders had retreated. Kai explained that there was still a chance he could regain his strength, return as the Alpha, if he was willing to remember who he was before the anger took root. But silently no one knew if he would return. I could feel the weight of it on Kai, the way his shoulders held still. The way he watched the water, as though waiting for a sign only he would recognize. We were in a limbo of sorts. Kai hadn't been named Alpha. Not yet. Maybe not even. But the land was watching. And so was I. One morning, I woke before him. The light had barely broken the edge of the horizon, casting the sky in pale violet and amber. Kai lay beside me, still and warm, one hand curled around mine even in sleep. I slipped out of bed quietly and stepped outside. The air was sharp with pine needles and damp earth. The river shimmered in the distance, flat and silver. Everything felt still. Like something was holding its breath. I felt the ripple beneath my feet and bent down, placing my palm to the wooden floor. Behind me, the door creaked open. He joined me without a word. We stood there, shoulder to shoulder, watching as the sky lightened. And then, without turning, he said, "They're coming," his hand finding mine. I looked at him. "You're sure?" He nodded once. The river stirred. Just slightly. The land was listening. And whatever came next, we would be ready. Together.